All right, well, I think we are finally live.
Really?
Really. Apparently, we are live, so let's get into this.
All
Uh,
right.
it is week two. Sorry for the technical delays. I don't know what the issue was initially, but seems like we might have finally figured things out. I'm going to get right into it since we're already behind now. I have Tahal Bedek with me, of course, at Bedek143. TL's out in Seattle.
All right, it's dark in here. Shit.
It is dark, and you need the spotlight on you at all times. Uh, who else is on the line? We got Jeff with us as well. Jeff, you still there?
He's muted.
We just got to unmute that. We got Doug joining us. We had some technical difficulties getting the stream to go. So it seems like it's just Tehal and myself at the moment, but we're going to be joined by the fantasy doctor coming up at 12:15. Go over some injury stuff, and of course we'll do start sits and we'll go over players we like and all that kind of stuff. Tehal, how was your week? What of interest jumped out at you in the NFL since we last spoke?
Well, since last week, there's been a bunch of stuff going on. I'm out here in Seattle, so I'm following the Cam Chancellor thing constantly. Everybody's down on the Seahawks. I think they're going to lose this week against Green Bay, so I've been following that story, reading all of those notes, reading all those blogs. Other than that, the Alshon Jeffrey thing's interesting only from a fantasy perspective because the Chicago Bears are about as meaningless a football team as there is. In 2015, I'm seeing like 7-9. It would be a best case scenario for them. Then that's about it. That's in Christina Michaels absent for Dallas this week. I mean, is this guy ever going to get a carry? What's going on there? I don't know. I hate to root for injuries, but I'm almost hoping one of these Dallas dudes goes down so Michael gets a shot at it.
Yeah, I hear you. And I just saw Jeff pop in. Jeff, good morning. How are you?
What, guys?
You are on vacation, I believe, so it was
Yeah.
nice of you to check in with us this morning. You were, of course, working last week, so you missed the first broadcast, but happy to have you back today. You are, of course, on Twitter at the Infirmary Report, and pleased to have you as part of the Nickel Press. So, how are things in your world? Where are you today?
I'm on vacation with the family in Laguna Beach, so things are pretty good. Talking a little football. Doesn't get much better.
There you go.
Living the dream.
Well, all right. Since we're behind on everything, let's jump right into some players. I don't want to beat around the bush with our personal lives. If we do have anybody checking in with us, again, as I mentioned, the fantasy doctor Salim Parekh will be on at 12:15, and we'll do an injury rundown there. When he's done, 12:30, 12:30-ish, we'll get into a bunch of your start-sit questions. So post those in the comment section below or ask them to any of us on Twitter, and we'll read them out as we go. But I'm going to jump right into I have you guys give me a list of players that you guys like this week. And Tahal, I'm going to start with you because one of the guys you said is very interesting to me. Why? And I had people asking me on Twitter this week. I'm talking about Colin Kaepernick. Somebody was asking me Colin Kaepernick or Nick Foles. I lean towards Kaepernick, and I told him to definitely make sure he tuned in because you actually really like Colin Kaepernick this week. So give me the breakdown. Give me the reason why. What do you like about it? He's in Pittsburgh today. Early start, 1 o'clock game. What's your love of Kaepernick?
Yeah. I've been a huge Kaepernick fan, even living in Seattle, since he kind of broke on the scene. I thought he was going to be like a superstar. He's kind of regressed since those years, and the fanfare is gone. Like, I mean, this is a guy I was drafting in like the third or fourth round like 2 seasons ago. Now, like, he's not even getting drafted. So that shows you how far he's fallen. Like, people saw the upside with the running ability. He's the fastest quarterback in the NFL, at least for his size. He's got sprinter speed, and Pittsburgh's defense. You saw what New England did to him. You saw what happened to him last year. Their secondary is garbage. Like, other than my boy Mike Mitchell out there, I don't trust anybody in the secondary. So I mean, their run D somehow is decent. I really don't understand how, but Kaepernick's gonna. I feel like he's gonna be able to kind of do whatever he wants out there, whether it's running get around the edge or on breakdowns, taking off and running. Like the secondary don't want none of that. And Vernon Davis, you saw what Gronk did to the secondary last week from the tight end spot. He might have a big day. Torrey Smith, who didn't really do anything last week, catch a deep ball. Bolden could get fed. Bruce Ellington looks nice. I just see like the ability for a lot of big play bonus type plays there. I mean, granted, Kaepernick's let us all down before. He might drop it dead, but the upside to me is limitless here.
Okay. Now, does the Vegas line is the Steelers are favored by 6.5 at home? That's actually one of the bigger lines of the week. Does that have anything to do with what you think as far as endorsing Kaepernick? I mean, do you think does that line factor in?
No, but I take the Niners on that bet all day long.
Really? Okay. So you like the upset over there?
Well, I don't know. I don't like that. I like them to cover the spread anyway.
Jeff, you have a feeling about Kaepernick this week?
Yeah, Kaepernick's from my hometown actually. So I've been a Niner fan most of my life. In fact, there wasn't much of a choice growing up. You had to be a Niner fan. There was no choice. There was no alternative. So I think he looked good last week. Yeah, I think that he's starting to feel comfortable in that system, and you didn't know what to expect coming into the season, but you have to be encouraged by what you saw last week, spreading the ball around. We talked about Vernon Davis last week. I think that Vernon Davis is going to be more involved this year and put that miserable season behind him in 2014. So I think there's cause for optimism there in San Francisco and Kaepernick and the rest of that squad too. Of course, Carlos Hyde looked like Walter Payton last week. Lot to be encouraged about.
Okay, well, Doug, Jeff, I'll keep it with you. You just mentioned Vernon Davis at the tight end position. One of your guys that you like this week is another tight end. That's Greg Olsen. Carolina is at home against Houston today. Another 1:00 game. What do you see with Greg Olsen? Carolina offense obviously missing some help at receiver, Kelvin Benjamin. So, what's your feeling over there?
Well, I'm just now able to talk about Greg Olsen from last week when he dropped the big dud. But I think he's going to rebound this week. Texans got torched by Travis Kelce in week 1. I think he went for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think, the only thing I think that gives me pause is that obviously defenses are focusing on Greg Olsen because there's nobody else there to throw to. So, but he does have the skill to beat any linebacker, and I think that he rebounds today and has a nice day. Last week was miserable, man. Not what you wanted to see, especially when you had guys that were drafted way later in the draft, like Jenkins, Kelce. Not necessarily Kelce, but Jenkins, Ebron having big days. I do think Olsen bounces back against the Texans today.
All right. Well, I'm going to stick with you because you have another guy that intrigues me on your like list this week. He's a guy I've been down on. I didn't see much upside for him this season. He didn't have a great week 1. I'm talking about Justin Forsett. I'm sure Tahal will have something to say about him being a former Seattle guy. But, Jeff, you do like Jeff Forsett this weekend. For what? They're playing Oakland. Jeremy Hill, Gio Bernard kind of thrashed the Raider defense last week. Is that anything towards why you're looking at Forsett?
Absolutely. Jeremy Hill ran all over Oakland last week. I think that especially, so that's one reason I'm looking at Forsett. I think that Oakland's banged up at offense too. I think that they're going to be playing from behind and they'll be throwing the ball and maybe Baltimore be grinding it out on the ground. I think just looking at what the Cincinnati and Jeremy Hill specifically were able to do to that defense last week, I think Forsett bounces back this week as another guy that disappointed hugely in week 1, but I think he turns it around today.
Okay. Tahal, you got anything to add to Justin Forsett, being that you are the Seattle representative for the Nickel Press? And
no, man, I hope you're right, man, because I was kind of down on this guy before the season just because I just didn't think he could do what he did last year over a full season. So if he has another dud this week after last week, everybody that drafted this guy in the people drafted this guy in the 2nd round, 3rd round, it's just people are going to be very disappointed. But I hope he at least has a good week this week against Oakland, who's they added a couple pieces on defense, so they were okay against the run. I mean, Hill didn't go hog wild on him or anything. I think he had like 19 for 63, so he was under 4 yards a carry. He wasn't doing anything crazy, but yeah, Forsette's going to probably catch a bunch of balls on them. I don't know. And Telefero's back, so he's the goal line back. I really just don't. I'm not a Forsett believer as far as fantasy star, but this week is a good week for him, or it should be. Oakland last year was like 30th against the run or something like that, or gave up the most rushing yards.
Yeah, I'm not big on Forsett season wise, but this week he does have a favorable matchup. But Taha, a running back you have is Tevin Coleman, up and down so far this preseason. He looked all right week one, but still rookie. Still has Freeman sharing carries with him. Why do you have him on your like list?
Yeah, I thought he looked really good week one. Just from my point of view from the eye, I thought he looks like a dude who was really close to breaking it like every time. Like he looked like he's like right there, like one tackle away or one guy away from just busting into the house. You just look at him and I see like 60-yard run. I said, guy looks like a freak, a gazelle. I see him looks like a monster out there. Devontae Freeman's garbage at running the ball. He's a decent scat backer. He's a nice little pass catcher or whatever. But Coleman, to me, looks like he has star capability. I'm feeling it. The Giants' defense is disgustingly inept. Like the linebackers and D-line front seven is probably one of the three weakest in the NFL. They've got a couple decent cornerbacks, but that's about it. So, I mean, I feel like he might bust one this week.
All right. I can get on board with that. I'm going to stick with you now for a guy that you don't like, and you don't like three quarterbacks this week. We'll get into Marcus Mariota a little later. He is, of course, the darling of week one with what he did. But I'm going to start with Ryan Tannehill because that's a guy I've been very high on. I think he can still finish around top 5 mark for quarterbacks throughout the season. Given that he had a horrible first week, I see your face already, so I'm curious to see where we're going with this. But given that he had a horrible first week, to see him on your list for bad starts for week 2 means he's really setting himself up in a deep hole to get out of going forward. Why don't you like Tannehill this week?
Why does everybody love this dude? He's done nothing. He's got 8-8 like once or twice in his career.
But we're talking.
He can't throw the ball down the field. The guy sucks. Like I don't understand why people are such a fan of this guy.
But
I hate Ryan Tannehill. Man.
We're talking specifically.
He's handsome.
We're talking specifically fantasy reasons, fantasy related.
His wife is one of those fake hot blondes. If you get down to it, she's really not that hot. She looks hot in pictures. She ain't that hot.
Pump the brakes. Pump the brakes.
Yeah, like I just like Jacksonville's defense is fairly tough. Like I think Tannehill will be decent. Fucking dink and dunk or whatever he does all day long. Throw 8-yard passes to Landry and the tight end. Maybe get some plays after the catch, but he'll have a decent day. I don't see him having like a 300-yard day with like 3 teams. I don't see anything crazy going on. I watch him sometimes and he looks really good, like on the intermediate stuff. But when they're playing solid defenses, I just stay away, man. I don't like anything. I haven't liked anything Miami's been doing for years on offense. Like, I mean, what's the running game? Lamar Miller had like 12 carries last week in a close game. Everything they do makes no sense to me. So I just don't like it.
I hear you. And to answer, what you started out with, I'm not saying I love Tannehill as, getting the team to the playoffs or winning a Super Bowl or anything like that. I'm just saying as a converted wide receiver back to a quarterback, getting drafted as such in the NFL, having the physical capabilities he does, improving on his touchdowns, improving on his interceptions thrown. Every year he's been in the league. The record's been what it is. I think he's been 8-8, 8-8, 9-7. So he roughly is right around that 500 mark as far as the win and loss goes. But as far as the fantasy quarterback goes, that's where I'm looking at all the upside. He's increased everything across the board from completion percentage and efficiency to yardage. So
I prefer Tyrod Taylor.
yeah, well, we all know how much
Skill wise and fantasy wise.
we all know how much you love Tyrod. But all right, I'm gonna cut back to Jeff now. I'm still waiting to see if Doug can chime in here. I know we had some technical issues, so I'm hoping we can still get him.
Send him a tweet?
What's that?
Should I send him a tweet?
No, he's been sending me texts. He's trying to get back in on the call, but we seem to be having some issues here. But Jeff, sticking with you, you got three running backs that you have on your list of dislikes this week. I'm going to start with Latavius Murray, only because to me that's the biggest name of the three you have. He's another guy like Tannehill that I had high on my list for the season. So given that he wasn't stellar in week one, again, he could really be burying himself if it holds true that he's not a guy that you like in week two. So Jeff, give me some reasons why Latavius Murray winds up on your dislike list for week two.
I like Murray's skill set, and I think he's a good running back. I like what I saw in Baltimore defense in week one. They look good even without Terrell Suggs. You have to wonder, and I talked about this earlier, you have to wonder about Derek Carr's injury and what he's able to do this week throwing the ball, injuring his throwing hand. I mean, it's, you have to wonder how effective he's going to be spinning that thing. They could be stacking the box. It's not that I don't like Murray over the season. I think he's an electric player. I don't, I'm kind of pumping the brakes on him this week just because I'm a little concerned about Derek Carr, and I think that he's going to struggle throwing the ball. They may stack the box against Murray once they see that Carr can't spin it, Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of fading Murray this week.
Yeah, I'm with you, and that's Amari Cooper's on my list. I love the kid. I love the rookie, but the same reasons you alluded to with Derek Carr's hand being an issue. He is going to play, but to what capacity? And if you take away the throwing game, Murray could be looking at a long day. So I don't argue with you on that. Before we get back to some more, go ahead.
Murray ran for 40 yards last week too. Yeah, I mean he looked kind of anemic last week. So it's this is a big week for him and a telling week going forward for sure.
Yeah, I don't think the Cincinnati defense is necessarily the one you want to judge Murray's game off entirely. But yeah, it wasn't a great debut for the 2015 season. That's for sure. Before we get into some other, likes and dislikes for this week, talking about Amari Cooper and the Raiders, what's your take on what happened with him and Pac-Man Jones? I tweeted out during the week. I said, how good is Cooper already that in his first game as a pro, he's getting that deep into the head of a veteran, whether Pac-Man Jones is crazy or not. Like, he's still a veteran. And for a rookie in his first game as a pro to be that far in his head that, he's going to take off his helmet and slam his head into his own helmet. I mean, what was your take, Tahal, on the Pac-Man Jones, Amari Cooper situation? And do you think he should have been suspended, or do you think the fine would suffice?
Yeah, I thought for being like a lifetime criminal, America's Most Wanted, I mean, I figured he'd get a little harsher penalty than $35K. I mean, I know 80% of his fund probably goes to one of those dudes that end up getting shot up at the club that's due to him, and the other 20% probably goes to one of his 12 kids. So I'm kind of confused how Pac-Man can afford to give up any money, but it's too bad. I like Pac-Man Jones as a player. I'm always kind of rooting for him. I root for these guys to come back, but then he keeps doing stuff like this. He's just too G at heart. Sometimes these guys that are just gangstered out, true to the game at heart, are just, they're from the hood. They can't take the hood out. They can't get the hood out of him, man. So it's like, I don't really blame him. He's just a G. Amari Cooper seems like a little soft-spoken kind of cupcake to me. So I'm not surprised that Pac-Man had to put him in his place for a second.
All right, Jeff, you have an opinion on that whole situation?
Yeah, I think. Well, I'm a G. I can't, Yeah, I'm a G, and I can't lose. I can't quit the streets either. It's tough. I understand what Pac-Man's going through. I think you hit the nail on the head, Andy. That from all the reports I read in Oakland, Cooper's a mouse. He just works hard and he's quiet. He goes about his business. he definitely was in Pac-Man Jones's head. You can see that once he hit his head on the helmet, Cooper's like, hey, man. He didn't do anything back, didn't retaliate.
Right.
He looked silly. Should have been fined way more. It's hard out there for a pimp, man.
It is. It is. Tahal knows. And Jeff, you, of course, know.
He knows.
You're
well,
like,
yeah. I mean,
you actually kind of remind me a little of Gator, if you know what I'm talking about. No?
Gator. Lost me.
Will Ferrell's pimping days and the other guys?
I got 4 kids. I don't watch TV.
All right, there you go. Well, anyway.
Football.
Well, some of you may have seen I just sent Doug another invite, so hopefully we'll get him on. We'll see what happens. But we're gonna get into another guy that I like this week. I've added him to my optimized FanDuel lineup for week 2. He was on Doug's list of likes, and he also made Jeff's list of likes. So, Jeff, I'm going to keep it with you. And big name, big rookie, Amir Abdullah, Detroit Lions running back. Why do you like him week 2?
Oh, what's not to like, Andy? The reports are Joique Bell's nowhere near 100%. We talked about him a bunch leading up to the season. I like him this year as they're grinded out back, short yardage back, but he's not healthy. They're playing Minnesota, who made Carlos Hyde look like Walter Payton last week. He showed some plays last week in week 1. He's electric. I mean, you have to love what you see. That coupled with the fact that Joique Bell's not 100% healthy, sweet ass matchup. What's not to like about Abdullah this week? He's in my DFS lineups. I got as much stock in him in week 2 as I could now.
Okay, yeah, I added him this morning. I changed up. I forgot who I replaced him with, but I got Abdullah and Lynch as my running backs in my one FanDuel lineup this week. TR, what do you say about Amir Abdullah? You liking? You disliking?
I'm being forced here to come around on him. I was thinking it was just too much hype on him before the season, and then he turns around and breaks off a couple incredible plays week 1 against San Diego, and Joique Bell took longer than I expected to come back from injury. He's kind of a fat dude anyway, so it's probably taken him a minute to get in shape. But Abdullah just looks he looks fragile to me. It looks like he's I don't think he can take the grind. So he's gonna have to break one or get like a screen pass or something in the red zone for him to kind of break out. I mean, he's a really good price on DFS. At least on DraftKings when I was looking, he's a pretty cheap option. So that looks good because the upside's off the charts this week. As you said, Hyde was shaking, making, breaking, getting twerking on these dudes like Walter Payton sidestep, spin moves, like just the whole deal. So Abdullah's even nastier, like as far as just quickness. So he has a good chance to break one. I wrote about him this week. I'm guessing he gets kept out of the end zone this week, but I've been wrong before, guys.
Well, we're going to allude to Russ Haggis, who just threw in the comment section that this show needs more to Hall. So I would love for you to continue expanding on this answer. But if you have nothing else to say about Abdullah, I want to take it to another rookie who I'm wearing the Reese's Senior Bowl shirt. This is a guy I got to see firsthand this past offseason. And that's, of course, Tyler Lockett, who's I told you to Hall a couple weeks ago that is it possible that he returns every kick for the Seahawks for a touchdown? And we kind of chuckled a little, but we said maybe a good 75% of them. He got off to a good start in week 1, and now people are starting to question, should they be playing him in their lineups as a wide receiver? Now, I think it's still a little too premature to do that. However, I got an interesting question from Anthony, who asked about his father's league where they get return yardage. Individual return yardage. So I think 30 return yards is equal to a point or something like that. And, that kind of, shifts the balance a little, that you might want to get Lockett into your lineups in a league such as that. Taha, like I said, Russ Haggis would like more of you on this in this week's episode. So I'm going to turn it to you with the Tyler Lockett question, being the Seattle Seahawk aficionado that you are firsthand in the great state of Washington. Go for it. Tell me some more Tyler Lockett news, if you have any.
First of all, Russ, thank you very much. It's much appreciated. I will be talking to you on Twitter. Am I friends with him on Twitter? I don't know, but he needs to get at me. I appreciate all his support.
Yes.
The Lockett thing it's gotten out of control, man. It's like, I mean, I live here, but it seems like it's a nationwide phenomenon. Like, if you're not in a return yards league, I mean, this you can't even think about starting this guy yet. Everybody's still like rostering him, and I'm kind of like, dude, what's going on here? Like, there's always, I guess there's a probably like a 5%, 10% chance that he gets like a deep ball each week. But look, last week the O line is so shaky. They only threw one pass 20 yards down the field, like literally the whole entire game, and they threw it 40 goddamn times. So, it's like, well, they're not going to face that kind of pass rush every week, obviously, but I think they'll take a shot to him once or twice a week, and he is out there quite a bit, like in 3 receiver sets. He's been out there, so he had a few grabs, and he's got the ability to shake and bake and make one break. But I'm not, I can't insert him in lineups just yet. I mean, he's like a DFS or something when you're going for that like sneaky dude that like pulls off like a big player or two that nobody else is in their lineup. I mean, he might win you $2 million, man. But I'm saying it's like a low percentage. Is all I'm saying. It's just people have just gotten a little carried away, and I hope he does. I hope he does break out. I love the dude. I love Seahawks. He looks like a great pick. But in return yardage leagues, I play in one of these. So yeah, it's like 1 point for every 30 yards. So like, I mean, imagine you have to have 100 yards returning, which is a great day to get 3 points. So
are you in the same league as Anthony's father? You get 30 return yards per point?
I believe so. I mean, we're good old buddies from war veterans.
There you go. Gator, Big Pimp Daddy. Do you have any Jeff, of course I'm talking about you. Do you have any Tyler Lockett news to add or any feelings?
No, I'm not in any one of those leagues. I was when I was a young man in a similar format, but no, I got nothing for him. I mean, unless you're in one of those leagues like our friend on the YouTube comment section there, I mean, he doesn't really appeal to me. It's kind of,
All right. Well, let's move along. Jeff, another guy you have, we'll stick with another rookie running back since we talked about Amir Abdullah. Kind of your neck of the woods in San Diego. Melvin Gordon is not taking the world by storm. He's on your dislike list this week. What lands him there?
A couple different things. They're playing Cincinnati, who was, stingy against Oakland and the aforementioned Murray last week. I think, you have to be disturbed with Danny Woodhead getting all the goal line looks and, cow, man. Woodhead, he looks like he just woke up from a 3-day bender and like strapped on a helmet, dude, and just goes and runs a few in. It's crazy. I want to party with him. I don't really want to roster him, but I want to party with him. So I don't know. They held Murray to 44 yards in week 1. That defense looks stout. So I'm kind of fading on Gordon this week. I want to see a little bit more before I'm confidently putting him in my lineup. So I'm kind of fading him this week and just kind of a wait and see approach with Gordon. Okay,
fair enough. Taha, anything to add about Gordon, or you want to jump into another one of these quarterbacks you don't like, maybe Marcus Mariota?
No, man. Sorry, I was answering a couple questions on fantasy football. It's getting crazy out here. I got my column answering questions on there. People are coming at Twitter. I keep trying to tell them, ask the question on the Nickel Press show. I don't have time to be tweeting you. Oh, Doug, cool. What's up? Melvin Gordon. I'm so disappointed. I'm trying to figure out why the Chargers, if they're going to do this running back by committee deal, and Woodhead's the goal line monster, what was their point in trading up for Melvin Gordon? It looks like the Ryan Matthews thing's all over again, except when why are you trading up to draft a running back unless he's like a superstar total workhorse? I mean, the dude didn't look great in preseason. He had a cool run last week, called back because his knee was down or whatever. But it's like Woodhead getting goal line carries at 5'4" and 145 pounds. I'm just confused at what San Diego was doing with the draft pick. I mean, I still like the dude. He's not as fast as I thought he was going to be, at least at the combine. So, it's kind of a bummer, especially in fantasy. when Woodhead is taking goal line carries, and then Oliver's in there, and it's just a weird situation. I'm glad I didn't draft him.
Well, Brandon Oliver was a huge guy I was big on last season, and I thought with Gordon coming into town and Woodhead coming back from injury, he was going to kind of get pushed to the background. But even Brandon Oliver looked pretty good in some limited time last week. So there are other options, and it seems to be maybe the Chargers roll more with the hot hand. Danny Woodhead happens to be a guy on my dislike list this week, and that's more to do with the Cincinnati defense. I don't think you should expect to see multiple touchdowns from Woodhead every week. But to speak to what Jeff said, he is kind of Gronk-like, and you want to hang out with this guy, right? And anyway, let's keep moving along. Doug, welcome to week 2. I'm glad you were finally able to make it in.
Technical difficulties, but nothing can keep me down too long.
Well, you missed a couple of the guys we were talking about, so I'm going to jump right into you with the guy that you like this week, and we'll just get the ball rolling from there. And that's Mike Evans. Spectacular sophomore wide receiver, been hampered with the hammy issues. Appears to be going today. We'll get some further updates as we go, and maybe talk to the fantasy doctor when he joins us in another 15 minutes or so. But why do you have Mike Evans on your list this week as guys that you are big on?
So one of the reasons is that, Lovie Smith has always taken a conservative route with players, especially with hamstring issues, especially in the past. I read that last week. So there's no way he would start Mike Evans if he wasn't near 100% or at 100%. And then also he's facing New Orleans this week. New Orleans lost a lot of depth in their secondary. I know they lost their draft pick to the IR. I'm not sure what his name was off the top of my head during training camps last preseason. And then they just lost, I think it's Keenan Lewis, their safety, or another cornerback to another injury. It's just this defense is going to be very depleted on all fronts. And, it's hard for me to not see Mike Evans making an impact today. I feel it's going to be an offensive showdown because neither of these teams have defenses, or at least decent enough defenses. And I just see Mike Evans being the main benefactor of it. So I really like him. I think he's a must start in every single format, no matter what. I think he's a bet for at least one touchdown today.
Okay. And I'll stick with you for one more. Sam Bradford. He's another guy on your like list. So you gave a great glowing recommendation for Mike Evans. Sell me on Sam Bradford for week 2.
Yeah. So we saw last week. Granted, it's not much of a feat to do well against Atlanta. Atlanta's never been known really for their defense, at least in the past few years. But in that offense, especially if he's healthy, he's not even on the injury report this week. He's facing the Cowboys, who, lost Claiborne, and they lost Orlando Scandrick earlier this season, and that was their top cornerback. And without that, you saw what happened last week. It was just an offensive showdown between Dallas and New York, and like I said, in that offense where you got DeMarco Murray. You got, Ryan Matthews. You got Jordan Matthews, Nelson Aguilar. You're always going to see a Philadelphia quarterback throw up high points, whether it's, Nick Foles or Mark Sanchez, now Sam Bradford. So I could see him definitely having another good week where he throws a lot of passing yards and definitely a touchdown or two. Maybe an interception that comes with it, but a touchdown, at least 300 yards today.
All right. I want to make mention also, I forgot to say when I was introducing you, this is Doug Moore, of course, at DMoore NFL on Twitter. And Doug has a new Tuesday night show going. They went this past week on Wednesday, giving some start-sit advice and waiver additions. He's joined by Mario Rotundi, who happens to be a fellow firefighter here in Brooklyn. He's going to be joining Doug on a weekly basis. They'll be doing the show Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern time, and helping you go over some waiver wire ads and give you some advice there. This week, they're going to be joined by, who's your guest this week, Doug?
It's going to be Fantasy Pro _14. That is Lou. He writes for the Fantasy Authority. I can give you his last name. It's a long one. He's on Twitter at
Is it as
fantasy
long? Is it as long as this plug?
It might be. I don't know, but no, he's at Twitter at fantasy_pro14. He writes for the Fantasy Authority. Very knowledgeable guy. Very nice. He's always, a fun guy to talk to, and I'm excited to have him on this week with Mario. So
Awesome.
Tune in for that.
Yes, definitely. Tune in, guys. That's on Blog Talk Radio on Tuesday nights. You can call in live, and we'll have the replay right here on the YouTube channel afterwards. All right, so let's get back into it. We got a couple more minutes before the doc joins us. Less than 10 minutes, he's going to be on here, and we'll get into some injury stuff. I want to get into this guy because he probably was maybe the biggest story of Week 1, and that was Marcus Mariota. Went off against Jameis Winston and the Buccaneers. And Taha, he's on your dislike list this week. Now, can you give me a little explanation as to why they're playing Cleveland? Cleveland is not necessarily a juggernaut. So what is it about Mariota you don't like this week, Mr. Beddick?
It wasn't more about me just really hating him this week. It was more about people's expectations being a little too high. Cleveland's got please silence your phone. Cleveland's got a underrated pass defense. I believe I forget their actual ranking, but I know they were fairly high ranked last season, and their running D was the one that got trucked all over. But I mean, Hayden's out there, some of these other dudes are out there. I don't know if Gilbert's going to actually do something, the top 10 pick at cornerback, but I like their defense, and they do have a couple pass rushers. So I just think it's just going to be different. It's going to be at home in Cleveland. The crowd's is a lot more buck there, even though they've been tortured over the years. They still have a better fan base in Tampa Bay, whose fan base is just disgraceful. They probably shouldn't even have a team there. I'm sorry to say, no offense if you're from Tampa Bay, but your fan base is soft. And I just think people are in for a letdown if they're starting him over a guy who's like a consensus top 10 guy every week, just thinking Mariota's just going to go off it's Cleveland, he's going to kill him, they suck. No, I just don't see it happening.
All right, well, let me ask you this, though. Between the two quarterbacks, do you think that was an indication of what we should expect between the two of them as pros, or do you think the bar?
Yeah, well, everybody's just hating on Winston right now after Week 1, and, the things that they're saying about him did look true. I mean, I was concerned watching him in college. I was like, is this guy really a star? I mean, he threw – you normally don't see these guys throwing the picks like he was throwing. I mean, he just throws just really risky and kind of dumb passes, and it seems like that's kind of continued on as he's, even he had a few picks, but he even had a couple more that were really stupid throws that should have been picked that were not picked. I'm concerned, man. I mean, I heard great reports on him. He's a great teammate, hard worker, probably studies all the film. So it just got to come down to him making better decisions on the football field. I don't think he's like a Jamarcus Russell or Ryan Leaf type bust. I think I'm not ready to give up on him. There's dudes I'm hearing on the radio, on TV that are already calling this guy like a colossal bust. They're like, oh, he's Jamarcus Russell. I'm like, damn, already? I mean, he still had a couple hundred yards. I mean, a lot of garbage time, but we'll see this week if he can do something against the Saints. I think he'll be all right. But Mariota, he seems smart. He's fast. He's faster than Winston. He seems to be making intelligent throws, and he's got a gun, man. I think Tampa may have made a mistake here.
Yeah, and conversely to the Jamarcus Russell comparisons for Winston, Mariota is getting comparisons to a combination of Montana and Marino and all kinds of other guys this week. So I think there's a little bit of overreaction for both. So let me ask Doug and Jeff, do either of you have something you want to add about Marcus Mariota, whether you like him going forward, whether you dislike his matchup this week?
Well, I think I want to talk about both of them, and I think you just nailed it. They're rookies, man. I think they'll probably have more bad games than good games. So I think all the expectations should be tempered with both of them. Mariota looked good. You have to be encouraged by what you saw. I mean, he's precise and accurate, got the ball out quick. Winston, had glimpses, but they say his football IQ is high. He studies film, but he's just going to have to make smarter decisions on the field. But they're rookies, so for people to be calling them colossal busts is like hyperbole galore, man. And I think that for fantasy purposes, you have to know they're rookies. They're going to have probably more bad games than good games. So that's how I feel.
Doug, what about you? What's your take on Mariota?
Yeah, I mean, when was the last time we saw a rookie quarterback make such of an impact that he was actually fantasy worthy? Cam Newton or Andrew Luck, which was years ago. It's hard because you saw Mariota do so well last week, but keep in mind he went up against the Buccaneers, who picked number 1 overall in the draft for a reason. And it's just a matter of you can't expect these quarterbacks to come in here and make an impact every week and then be some sort of return value right away. Winston's going to take time. He has a horrible offensive line, no defense. And personally, I don't think he has a good head coach, but that's just me. Mariota, I think, did better than expected. I don't expect him to do every week like what he did. But I would like Mariota more right now in terms of fantasy because he has a rushing ability. And I just think that offense fits his game more. So, but, you can't have all these high expectations for these guys. They're rookies for a reason.
Okay. Now, we may have enough time for one more guy, like or dislike, before we get joined here by the fantasy doctor. But I'm going to go back to you, Doug, since we're talking to you right now. A guy that was on your dislike list is Eddie Royal. Kind of tying this into the doc joining us in a moment with the news that Alshon Jeffrey's out. Has your opinion on Eddie Royal changed for this week? You had him on your dislike list. Does he still sit there? Doug.
Yeah, so with Alshon Jeffrey being out, I think more than not, I think Martellus Bennett gets a big boost more than Eddie Royal. I would say Martellus Bennett is now top 5 tight end this week. And he usually is always good in the beginning of the season as opposed to the end where he sort of falls off. But without Alshon Jeffrey this week, I really think that Martellus Bennett is going to be looked at a lot. Eddie Royal is someone that I think could be flex-worthy, but I'm not too sure about him. He was also coming off an injury. And I just, I don't know. It's just something about him I just can't get behind. I like Martellus Bennett this week. Royal, if you have to, start at flex, but probably nothing more than that.
All right, Tahal, let me switch it over to you. What do you feel about Eddie Royal, knowing that Alshon Jeffrey's out this week? Is he somebody that you want to plug into your lineups, or do you feel like
yeah, if you own him, I guess. I'm going more towards in DFS. I'm hitting up my boy, Washington State Cougar Marquez Wilson, man, $3,400 on DraftKings. I just put him in the lineup. Boom, he had a 50-yarder last week. I think he goes long. I think he goes deep, and I'm more interested in him. Eddie Royal. Everybody loves Eddie Royal every year. He always has a couple flashes where he's a couple big games, makes a bunch of catches. He might have a good day today, but like Doug said, Martellus Bennett should have a nice day. The Arizona Cardinals, I think it was a couple years ago where they were like just insanely bad, where it's like you have to start a tight end who's playing the Arizona Cardinals. They always go off. So I don't think all of that is gone yet. So I think they may still struggle a little bit covering tight ends, although I do like their safeties now. But, Bennett should be good. Marquez Wilson is a guy to keep an eye on, though, if you want the real sneaky DFS play. Regular lineups, Royal's a much safer option and probably worthy of a flex play.
Yeah, I think Matt Forte probably stands to get the biggest bump in the Bears offense today. Arizona gave up 120 yards on the ground last week and over 300 yards passing. And Forte is that dual threat option. I think he's a safe, probably one of the safest plays you can have today at running back, especially with Jeffrey being out, just because he can get those catches out of the backfield, and he is going to be in for all 3 downs and get the carries. We're still waiting for the doctor to join us, so I'll go with another.
Hey, Andy.
Yeah.
Hey, I gotta bounce, but I can see my wife in a bathing suit on the beach, so I gotta go. Good talking to you guys.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot more fun than what we're doing. So go enjoy yourself and enjoy the rest of your day, your vacation, and we'll talk to you soon. And there he is. He's out. Still waiting for the doc to join us. Let me get another like and dislike in here. I'm going to throw it out there. A guy I like this week is Bishop Sankey. Reason being is, again, that Cleveland defense. I know I'm going to ask you, Taha, because of that glowing report you gave about Mariota. What did you think of Sankey coming into the season and then after week one? Have you kind of gotten back onto maybe thinking he's a viable option in the backfield? And I was kind of impressed with what I saw. Sometimes it takes some guys to adjust to the play and the speed of the NFL, and I think maybe our expectations were a little too high for him as a rookie. Now he's kind of getting a better feel for it. He seems to have held off his competition there. Terrence West did get some carries, but it seemed like it was more a mop-up duty just to kind of get him familiar with the offense, being that he just joined the team in the last week or two. Do you think he's a threat to Bishop Sankey? Do you think the Cleveland Browns are defense is a threat to Sankey today? I personally like him as a viable start if I had him on my roster. Not so much for DFS, but certainly like if he was choice of a running back two or a flex, I'd be very comfortable starting him this week. Taha, what do you feel about that?
Yeah, he should have a nice week, man. I'm a fan. He went to University of Washington right around here in Seattle. I was a big fan. It sucks for the Titans and Titans fans because they're like, we drafted this guy ahead of Jeremy Hill and Carlos Hyde, both those running backs. He was the first running back drafted last year, and it's got to hurt, man. That's got to sting because he's more. I don't know if he can handle the full workload. I mean, he had a ton of carries at UW, so it's like, but at the NFL grind's a different thing. He seems like kind of a change of pace guy, but a little more than that. So I definitely like him more than Terrence West. Terrence West did get in there a little bit. The other rookie didn't get in there very much. Cobb had a couple carries, but he doesn't look like shit. So I'm high on him. Cleveland has a pretty weak run defense, although my boy Danny Shelton, another UW alumni that they drafted 12th overall, might help out with the run, clogging it up there. But Sankey is a solid play. Yeah, I'm feeling it.
What's with all the Washington love, man? You have a lot of guys coming out of your neck of the
All we
woods.
can do is produce stars, man. It's the most underrated talent-producing city, especially the NBA too, man. There's tons of Seattle dudes in the NBA.
Yeah.
Didn't they produce Jake Locker?
They did.
Ryan Leaf.
I don't know where Ryan Leaf's from. I forget where. If he's from Eastern Washington, I don't know. I don't go out there.
Well, where did he play?
Well, he played at Washington State.
Oh, isn't that Washington?
Yeah, it's in Washington. I don't know if he's born in Washington. I'm talking about people born
I know.
in Washington.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
I don't know where that loser's from.
Doug, take over the as I try to get the doctor in here. Take over the Bishop Sankey case for this week. You like it? You dislike it?
Yeah, I mean, when we talked about Bishop Sankey coming into the NFL last season, people pegged him as a top 25 running back, and I never find that simply because look, it's the doctor. I'll be quick. Just because we saw how bad that offensive line was, and just I don't know, it just didn't look good. But somehow people still thought he would do good. And this season, he's had one good game. Granted, it's been the first game of the season, but I just can't get behind it. You have to keep in mind, those stats that everybody in Tennessee did were inflated. You saw Mariota throw for 4 touchdowns in the first half. Yes, it was against the worst team in the NFL, arguably. It's hard to get behind these stats as much as they were. I don't like Bishop Sankey. I don't think he's anything more than a change of pace back in the NFL, and especially with Wisenhunt as his coach. I just don't trust him. He has a decent matchup this week, but if anything, if you have to, throw him as a flex, but I just can't get behind him. I don't trust him.
Okay. As you mentioned, we are, in fact, now joined by the fantasy doc, Dr. Salim Parekh. I'm going to throw on a little overlay for you. There you go. Dr. Salim Parekh, MD. Good morning, Doc. How are you today?
Good, guys. How are you?
Good.
Everything's going well. How are things in your neck of the woods?
Excellent. Just can't wait for the games to start. Woke up this morning with, surprises on my boys, seeing Des Bryant's timeline getting pushed out.
What's your take with the Des Bryant? I wanted to get into his foot a little because there were so many different accounts and reports of what was going on. Now, you, of course, had a tweet that a bunch of us shared, breaking down the exact injury, the exact process, what it is. It was pretty thorough, pretty in-depth. It gave me a much better understanding of it. So I'll retweet that after the show if anybody missed it or maybe you did see it. And reports were anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to 8 to 6 to the whole season. Other players, I'm drawing a blank right now who it was, but who had, I think it might have been Dante Stallworth, who had the same injury. We're talking about it from experience. So give us a little bit about what you see with Dez.
Yeah, so the biggest concern with Dez this morning when waking up and hearing that he had a bone graft done on his fifth metatarsal. So that immediately brings a lot of red flags to my mind. The first of which is, we're hearing that this is a Jones fracture, but it's never really been confirmed by the Cowboys. So the first and foremost thing is, hey, did he really have a Jones fracture or not? Because a bone graft is not something you routinely do for a Jones fracture the first time around. You usually will do it if it did not heal. If you look at Kevin Durant, he had that surgery, the bone graft surgery, the third surgery that he had. So the first thing that comes to mind is, was this really a Jones fracture or not? Then I start thinking, wait a minute, if it was a Jones fracture, was this a little bit more than just a simple Jones fracture across the bone? And was that bone in multiple pieces? Or did the Cowboys surgeons have a hard time getting the bones back together, so they had to bridge that area with the bone graft? And so these things start running through your mind, and it's a red flag when you start hearing about bone graft surgery the first time around. Now, while I was reading a bunch of things this morning, and the Cowboys doctor saying this is something that they routinely do for the first-time surgery for Jones fractures. And if that's the case, maybe that timeline is going to be a little bit shifted more towards the 8-week mark. But again, when you hear bone graft surgery, you worry. And when they start shifting the timeline from 4 to 6 weeks to 10 to 12 weeks, there's more going on here than we really know.
Okay. Now, do you expect to see Dez back this season? And if he does make it back towards the latter end of the year, do you think this is something that would be a full recovery and he'd have no setbacks? Or is it going to take some getting used to, so he's not going to be at 100% for those couple games you might be able to get him towards the end of the year, which is more specifically the playoffs for fantasy?
I think we're going to see Dez back this year. My gut feeling, again, I haven't seen the x-rays, but my gut feeling is you're going to see him between the 8 and 10 week mark. They're going to get him back there. If this heals enough that he's not very symptomatic, they're going to get him back to playing. They need him. They absolutely need him. And so I imagine that when he gets back, he'll be close to 100%. That doesn't mean the bone's healed. And oftentimes, even in my own practice, when I'm taking care of college athletes, we'll get them back to the playing field, get them through the season, and then do a second surgery in the off season to get the bone to fully heal. What we try to do is just get them to the point where they can play and they can get back on the playing field. And that's what I think you're going to see with Dez.
Okay. Not to get too off topic, but you did mention when you were dealing with college athletes, you want to tell everybody, are you comfortable telling everybody where it is that you work and perform these procedures?
So I'm not able to disclose because of privacy issues who I perform them on, but I've taken care of high-level college athletes and some who are in the professional sports, and that's kind of the depth I can get into.
I didn't mean to put you out there like that. I know where it is, so I thought maybe this was a good time for you to shine. But you can look up the doctor and figure it out.
If I can put perspective for you, I'm down at Duke, and so Duke being one of the college sports heaven universities, you can imagine the kind of athletes we see coming through here.
There you go. And I'm just saying that more to lend credibility to everybody watching and knowing exactly why we call you the Fantasy Doc and why we value your feedback and opinion so much on this show. So now it seems like Dez would be a great buy low candidate from what you're saying, that he will be back this season. Another guy shifting focus that was while Dez's timeline is getting pushed further and further away, this guy's is just getting moved further and further up. And we, of course, talked with you about him in the preseason, and that's Arian Foster, who is already practicing again. And there were reports that he might have been probable for this week. It seems like he's going to be out today for a fact, but it's looking like next week he might actually return to NFL action, which is, pretty remarkable Adrian Peterson-like recovery from my perspective. What
Right.
can you tell us with Arian Foster?
Yeah, so Arian Foster again had what's called a sports hernia. It's where the abdomen muscles meet the groin muscles, kind of right in your groin and private part area. And he had that reconstructed early in August. The usual timeline for that is 4 to 6 weeks, and the Texans have stood by that timeline throughout. And so you are seeing him make the appropriate gains in the appropriate timeline. I do think that within the next 1 or 2 weeks, you're going to see him back on the playing field. And when he gets on the field, they're going to work him hard. I think they're going to go 100% right off the bat, right out of the gates.
Okay. So Arian Foster, it's real. He's on his way back. He's almost here. So if you got him at a good price and you're happy, he's going to add to your offense. Another guy with a groin issue, and this is a little bit more troublesome for week 2, and a lot of people have been asking about this guy in start or sit. The biggest reason is because he plays Monday night. I'm talking about Chris Ivory from my favorite team, the Jets. It seems Todd Bowles, the coach, said it's not something he's worried about. Seems to be more of a game time decision, but again, with it being a Monday night game, that's a little troublesome. Is there anything you can elaborate on what you know of Chris Ivory, and is the extra day's rest between today and tomorrow something that could stand to significantly benefit him?
Well, the extra day's rest will certainly benefit him, and I imagine that he's going to be back Monday night full steam ahead. I don't see him being held back at all. I think the extra day just benefits him.
Okay. Another guy. So Chris Ivory. If you're worried about Chris Ivory, my personal feeling is the same as what the doctor said. There's just so many games in the season that guys don't want to miss them. So he's going to do everything he can. And the groin doesn't seem to be an issue from our doctor to the Jets head coach. So feel comfortable with Chris Ivory Monday night, unless we'll get into anybody disputing that later. But other guys on the list that we wanted to talk to the doc about while we have you, Derek Carr. He had a hand injury, had to leave week 1. He's coming back now in week 2. Will be playing. Doc, what do you see with Derek Carr? Should we be worried about that throwing hand?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a scary injury from a quarterback perspective. You know, he hurt his thumb on his throwing hand, was in a cast. Lucky for the Raiders that his MRI came back clean, meaning there were no ligament tears. And that's the biggest thing we worry about with these thumb injuries. And so he was in the cast. The swelling went down tremendously. I think do a lot of deep passes today, but I do think that he's going to be able to play sufficiently well today. I don't think this is really going to hinder him too much today, but even less so in the upcoming weeks.
Okay. Moving along, Deshaun Jackson was somebody that Doug wanted to know about. What can you tell us about Deshaun Jackson? Do you have any news or updates on his health status for week 2?
So I don't really have much going on with him. I think it's just steady with him. There's really nothing more active going on the wires for him.
Okay. Delaney Walker is listed to be out at this time. So what his injury long term?
So his injury is a bigger deal because if you look at the wrist, it has lots of ligaments throughout the entire front, back, inner, and outside part of the wrist.
Oh. Doctor just froze on us. We'll see.
Alignment is that they rely on that wrist heavily to do any kind of blocking, less so for the receivers. And so he's out for today. My guess is the pain is just too much for him. He's probably got limited motion, a lot of swelling. It's going to be a week-to-week thing for him. I think within the next 1 to 3 weeks, you'll see him back on the field.
Okay. I'm going to hit you a couple more quick-fire ones here. C.J. Spiller. It seems to be a go. Returning from injury. He's been a little gimpy so far in the first couple weeks. What can you tell us?
Yeah, C.J. Spiller's a go. He's active for today. He had a cleanup surgery in August. What that really means is that they went in, cleaned up the inflammation, but I probably took a look. If he had some small tears of his cartilage discs in there, they cleaned that out, and he seems like he's ready to go. So I have no worries about him.
Okay. Jordan Reed was on the injury report, but it seems to me that he's just going to be there every week for his entire career. So it's just something. It's just inevitable. I don't really want to get too much into Jordan Reed if you have him play him. Alshon Jeffrey, of course, is out. Luke Kachili for Ivy Piers. That's a big injury. I wanted to ask you about him and DeAndre Levy, if you have anything to offer about both. The thing with DeAndre Levy, I'm not sure how much you've seen about him, but there were rumors going around that he picked up a parasite on an off-season vacation or something like that, and that might have some effect on what's happening with his injuries. But Luke Kachili and DeAndre Levy, two high-impact linebackers in IDP leagues. So can you tell us about either of those two?
Yeah, so Kachili's injury last week was scary. I mean, you see a guy kind of flat on the field. That's very scary. He has a concussion. No two concussions are the same. So he is going to be a day-to-day, week-to-week decision. Just by the, and even though some concussions just look really bad, sometimes those players bounce back quickly. Sometimes they take longer. Even the ones that look really kind of benign or really harmless tend to be ones that take a long time to recover. So again, week to week, day to day, he's got a concussion. He's going to go through the protocol. He's got to pass the independent physician or practitioner's review of his protocol before he can get back on the playing field. Again, my gut feeling tells me 2 to 4 weeks, but I could be wrong. Again, it's just day to day, and it depends on how he advances.
Okay. And,
With Lee,
yeah.
Levy, it's a bigger issue. There's a lot of secrecy about what's going on with his hip, and it seems that there's something going on in his hip, and it looks like it's not a strain. It actually looks like there might be some internal issues going on with the hip itself. It doesn't appear, I know the rumors came about the parasite, but I don't think the parasitic infection had anything to do with what's going on with the inside of his hip joint. When you start thinking about inside of hip joints, one of the biggest things we worry about is labral tears. So if you look at the hip joint, it's like a ball and socket, kind of looks like this. It's got a cup that holds that hip into place. The labrum is around the cup. It's like a bumper around the cup that helps hold the ball into place. And so if you have a tear there, it can be very painful and it can lead to some instability. Oftentimes that needs surgery, and if you have surgery, that's about a 3 to 6 month recovery. So again, we don't have a lot of information on it, and there's a lot of secrecy about what's really going on. So until we know more about it, we'll just have to see what happens with him.
All right. Anybody else you wanted to talk about and mention? I know you're an avid fantasy player yourself. So if there's no other injury guys you wanted to make note of, any guys just in general you would like to share your wisdom and knowledge with about?
Yeah, so I think things. LaShawn McCoy, he re-aggravated his hamstring. Keep a lookout and see how he does for the Bills in the first few series today, because that hamstring can become a issue all season long if it doesn't get the time it needs to heal. So re-aggravating it this week to me is an issue. And early in the season, we see a lot of athletes suffer from dehydration and fatigue, and that causes the potential for a re-injury to occur. So in game time situation, if he re-injures, look for this to be a nagging issue for him and the Bills all season long. From the Buccaneers, another issue, hamstring again. These guys with hamstring and quadriceps injuries, calf strains, these things can become recurrent issues throughout the season. So early on, you're going to see the teams really nurse these guys along, and then mid-season, you're going to see these guys kind of blowing it through again.
Okay. Now, you mentioned C.J. Spiller while I have you on. Carlos Williams, we advocated adding him last week before the games, and then he got some production and looked pretty good. And now a lot of people, because of the because of LaShawn McCoy news, are questioning should they be starting Carlos Williams. I personally think it's a little too soon, especially with McCoy playing, because you're really taking the gamble that McCoy is going to not be able to finish the game. You mentioned that with the hamstring, he could start, but it could very quickly deteriorate in game. How do you feel with a guy like Carlos Williams? If you're a fantasy owner, are you looking at somebody else to start? Is that too much of a risk, or is that something that you really see as a viable option, that maybe you would get Carlos Williams into one of your lineups?
Yeah, I think it's a viable option. I'm not overly concerned at this point. So I think, go ahead, activate him and see what happens. But I don't think it's that big of an issue.
What, for McCoy, that is?
For McCoy.
Okay. And yeah, that's been my feeling too. So, all right, well, I want to thank you again for all these insightful the information you offer with the injuries. Is there anybody else for week 2 you wanna share with us, or will that do it for week 2 injury report? Doc, you there? Doc? All right, I think we're losing the doctor. Tahal, you still there with me, buddy? Tahal,
Yes, sir.
you still there? What's your reaction to everything the doctor was just sharing with us?
What was he sharing? I was on the phone with my bookie the whole time. I heard most of what he said. He, seems spot on. It's it's great. It's so awesome having a dude here working at Duke University. I wanted to ask him if he knew my cousin. She's going to Duke right now, or she went somewhere else. She's in a different program over there. I was going to say, look out for her. Tell him to say what's up. Maybe tell her that he knows me, and then maybe they'll become really good friends. Maybe we can get her on the show. She's another medical specialist and related to me, so she's a legend in the game. But yeah, man, the Des Bryant thing's good. He's coming back. I'm really happy with the Arian Foster thing to hear that he's just going to be a full go when he comes back. I like to hear that. So yeah, it's just great having him on there, man. It's a pleasure.
All right.
And
Excellent. Well,
I
I
don't
know.
have much other reaction. I like it.
Yeah, it's awesome having them and having that be an option for us and for all our viewers and watchers. If you're watching the show, we appreciate it. We see a bunch of people all watching this live. You can ask your starter sit questions in the comment section, or you can ask any one of us that you might follow on Twitter. We're going to start addressing those now. We got about 20 minutes till kickoff, so we're going to start getting into those starter sits now. I'll go ahead with the first one, but I just wanted to make mention. If you are watching the show, make sure you like us. Just click the thumbs up button right there. Like the show, and if you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel, please sign up. The more subscribers, the more likes we get, the more relevance the show will have in the YouTube stream, and maybe the better we can make it for you. You might have seen a little bit of an increase in our quality of production from week 1 to week 2, so we're trying to improve at every angle we can. All right, so getting into the start sits, we got 20 minutes till game time. Here we go.
Woo!
Kendall Wright or Doug Martin in the flex, 1 point PPR. Doug,
Ooh.
you start with this one.
In PPR, Kendall Wright.
Kendall Wright in PPR over Doug Martin. What say you, Tehal?
Yeah, that's like it goes in line with all these questions. We're getting so many questions where it's like I just want to be like, dude, flip a coin, man. Like, I mean, some of these calls are just like, dude, I can't call that, man. I really can't. But I think I'm gonna go Dougie Fresh here, Dougie Martin, man. I think the Saints defense doesn't really impress me, and Martin could get a decent amount of catches as well. I mean, I like Hunter, but I think Martin has a better chance of scoring probably.
Yeah, and I'll take the side of you with Doug Martin. I don't have a problem with Kendall Wright. I just don't think that Mariota is going to do what we saw him do in week 1 on a weekly basis. So I think there's going to be some regression there. I think the Cleveland defense is better than the Saints defense at this time. I do think the Saints get the win, but the fact that Doug Martin gets carries as well as receptions adds to his value for me. So it's just I think that he factors more into that right off the bat. Let's keep him rolling. I had another question here a minute ago. I don't know what I did with it now. Any of you have a question you wanna put up there?
Yeah, what's up with Brian Quick?
What do you mean? What's up with him? What's up with him?
Brian Quick is a healthy scratch yet again this week, but he was rejected to be their number 1 receiver this season.
Yeah, well, he was coming back from a pretty serious shoulder injury, so that there was a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Optimism that he would be a healthy option right out the gate. I think he's still somebody long term, but let me get
He's
back.
a healthy scratch today, though.
Yeah, it's got to concern you a little, especially considering that I don't know what to make of the Rams receivers at this point. They look good in week 1. Of course, now they go at Washington. I think Washington's secondary is better than advertised, so I'm not overly excited about the Rams matchup today in Washington on the road. But Quick wasn't really doing much for you in week 1, so I don't know if it's a huge loss in week 2, and they were still productive. let me give you another sit question here. Carlos Williams or Danny Woodhead? I'm imagining that's either as a running back two or as a flex. I think we got into that a little bit at the end of the doctor's portion with LaShawn McCoy playing. I personally am a little worried about Carlos Williams getting the same type of workload that he did in Week 1. Doug, since you're up on the screen right now, what do you feel? Would you be more comfortable with Carlos Williams or Danny Woodhead?
So I said on Tuesday with the show with Tahal that somebody I'd want to start this week is Danny Woodhead. You saw last week he had 2 rushing touchdowns. He was the goal line back for them. Carlos Williams, like you had said, with McCoy playing, even though he has an easy matchup, I just don't see Carlos Williams doing much as long as McCoy's playing. And Woodhead, I think until Melvin Gordon gets more acclimated in the passing, pass block game, I have to go with Danny Woodhead this week. He had 6 red zone carries. I just looked it up last Sunday, so I don't see why you can't start him this week.
All right, Taha, what about you? If you had a choice between Carlos Williams and Danny Woodhead as your running back two or flex,
yeah, no question, man. You have to go Woodhead here, like thinking intelligently. Everybody loves Woodhead after last week or this week. I don't like him nearly as much as the consensus does, just because I'm like, okay, he scored a couple goal line TDs last week. What are the odds that happens again? I like Cincinnati's defense. I like them to rough him up a little bit, but I still think he'll get a bunch of catches, et cetera, and do what he kind of normally does. Carlos Williams might get 5 carries. He might get 15. We don't know what's going to happen there. If McCoy's good to go, he probably won't be in there other than maybe short yardage. So, he does have the short yardage TD upside play, but you just can't play a backup running. You just can't do it. You got Woodhead's is technically a backup, but is sharing time. Williams is a straight up backup. You can't start backups just straight on a hunch play or whatever. I just can't do
it. Even with the magic of Tyrod Taylor. Even with the magic of Tyrod Taylor next week?
Carlos. Yeah, it's obviously rubbing off on Carlos Williams, but I think it's Tyrod's gonna do his own thing, man. Carlos doesn't need to be involved with that.
I hear you. All right, well, Tahal, I'm gonna keep it with you, and I like this question a lot. Now that Alshon is apparently out, which we now know he is. This is from Brendan of Fantasy Ram, who does great baseball DFS, by the way. Puts out great lineups, but he wanted to know now that Alshon is out, James Jones or Stevie Johnson, half-point PPR.
That's my boy, man, Brendan.
Yeah, he's awesome, right? All right, so what would you tell Brendan then? James Jones or Stevie Johnson, half-point PPR? Tall.
You got to go Stevie Johnson. I think for PPR, I think he should have a bunch more grabs. James Jones. What is James Jones? Even when he's in his prime there in Green Bay, what do you get? The 4 catches for 80 yards and a TD. He's just like, when he has a big game, it's usually not because he has a ton of catches. And I don't see him. He might have 2 catches today. He might have 8. I'd lean towards the shorter end of that number. You can't predict James Jones is going to have 7 catches for 100. You just can't do it, man. I like Stevie Johnson. Even if it's short yardage stuff, I really like Cincy's corners. I really like what they're doing on defense, but I still think just the amount of times the Chargers will probably be throwing it, I think Stevie has a chance for putting up better numbers PPR-wise.
All right, Doug, what about you?
James Jones, so I have to go with Stevie Johnson, like Tahal said. He's a number 2 receiver. Antonio Gates is still out with that suspension. He scored a touchdown last week, I believe. I could be wrong, but I know he had a pretty decent game last week.
Yeah, he got in the end zone.
Yeah, and he did that against Detroit. Detroit's supposed to be one of the top defenses in the league, and I don't know. I think the Chargers' offense is for real this year. Big upgrade with Stevie Johnson there, number 2 receiver, and Keenan Allen looking like he's ready to come back from his sophomore slump. So I definitely will go with Stevie Johnson this week.
All right. Now my feeling with that was I like Cincinnati defense too much, so I don't like the upside. I think I think James Jones. I think Stevie Johnson gets more looks and has more targets today. But I think James Jones will ultimately wind up with more production, even if it is just one catch for a touchdown. That will quickly add up to what Stevie Johnson could match with say 3 catches, for 30 yards, 40 yards in that range. So I like James Jones' upside a little bit more based on their matchups today, but I can't argue with what either of these guys said. I'm going to go to another question here from Jack Fleming on Twitter at Jack_Flem. Who should I start this week, John Brown or Amir Abdullah? Doug, we'll keep it with you. John Brown or Amir Abdullah?
You got to go with Double A here. You got to go with Double A. He's coming off a huge week. He's expected to get around the same amount of touches as he did last week. He's just so explosive. And as much as I like John Brown as a high floor type of guy, I got to go with Amir Abdullah. His upside is ridiculous.
Okay. What about you, Tal? John Brown or Amir Abdullah getting the start for you?
I think the consensus is, and everybody's got to would go Amir Abdullah at all. But I'm feeling John Brown this week for a big game. I'm not as high on John Brown as some of you. He started off the game looking great last week and then kind of disappeared. But against that weak-ass Bears secondary, I could definitely see him going ham and eggs today against Chicago. So, it's a very tough call. Both those guys are crazy explosive, could have very big days or have busts. So I'm just going to get cute with it and go my man, bad John Brown.
Yeah, I got to lean Abdullah. Just the upside is there with the rush and the receiving. So I'm going to go with Dougie there and say Amir Abdullah. Go to Joe Paulson at JoeyP322 on Twitter. Who should I start this week, Eddie Royal or Brandon Coleman? That's an interesting one because obviously Brandon Coleman is rising up a little on the Saints depth chart. I still think with Jeffrey out, Eddie Royal is the main receiving threat for the Bears this week, and I think that's a nice option to have. But Taha, what would you rather have, Eddie Royal or Brandon Coleman?
That's a really tough call. I've gotten a ton of Brandon Coleman questions this week. And it's tough to say. They're like, now that he's the number 2, I'm like, is he officially past Colson? I mean, I don't know. I hope he does. It's a little more talented, or at least sprier in this day and age with Colson being so old. Gosh, that's a tough one, man. It's Coleman or Royal. I think you have to lean Royal. Is it PPR? I mean, I think you have to lean Royal if it's PPR, especially just with the amount of targets he should be receiving out there. I think you have to do that. I think Coleman might have a better shot of scoring, though.
Yeah, it wasn't specified. Doug, it was PPR wasn't specified. Doug, you have a feeling on that? Brandon Coleman?
Yeah, so I just can't get behind I can't get behind Eddie Royal. Tahal mentioned that they're playing Arizona, right?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, so you could imagine, you could see Eddie Royal potentially being shadowed by Patrick Peterson. You don't know, possibly. And Coleman's facing a weak Tampa Bay secondary, a weak defense in general, and I think he's got more upside. After what we saw last week, he's a big play receiver. I think Andy had said that he has a higher chance of scoring a touchdown than Eddie Royal, and I agree. And I'm going to have to stick with Coleman this week, actually.
All right. I'm going to ask this one. This is from Alex_RG8 on Twitter. And I'm asking this because Tony Romo, after how he finished, on the Sunday night game that everybody was watching at the same time, everybody's big on Tony Romo this week, or even, some are questioning, is he a good start? He loses Dez, obviously, so it's a little questionable who his options are going to be. I know Lance Dunbar's been a guy that's been getting a lot of questions about. But Alex asks, who should I start at quarterback, Tony Romo or Cam Newton? So, Doug, since you're still up there, who would you rather have?
That's just that's a situation where both quarterbacks lost their top receivers and become drastically, I think, worse in terms of fantasy football. With Kelvin Benjamin for Cam and Dez for Romo. I really don't know. I'm gonna have to go Tony Romo. I think he's got more decent options. I expect him to target Lance Dunbar a lot, target Jason Witten a lot. I think that Newton has, Greg Olsen, but he also has a much worse offensive line that doesn't give him as much time. Cam Newton's main way of getting those additional points is by running, and he didn't have a very good week last week in terms of rushing. And again, much worse offensive line than Tony Romo. I think Romo has more options in terms of the pass game. I'm gonna have to stick with Tony Romo.
Okay. I think it comes down to the matchup, and I think Dallas has a much more favorable matchup at home against Philly as opposed to at Philly. They're on the road at Philly. But even still, Carolina is playing Houston, and I just think that Texans defense is going to continue to gel, especially with J.J. Watt leading it. Taha, what do you think, though? Would you rather have Tony Romo or Cam Newton as your quarterback?
Easy call, man. You got to go Romo. Romo's still having top 10, 12 quarterbacks this week. Cam Newton had to bump down. I'm a huge Cam Newton fan. I feel bad for him. The receivers are trash. Watch the replay of Ted Ginn dropping that wide open touchdown pass and dart from Newton. Like, it's just disgusting out there. How dare they put these targets out on the field for this guy? It's a disgrace. It's a joke. I feel bad for Newton. The rushing yards are going to be tougher to come by with Watt and Clowney playing more yardage, setting the edge out there. So, normally I'm cool with starting Newton any week just because you never know. You might get a couple rushing TDs. You might do this and that. I think it's going to be just percentage-wise, you got to play the odds-o and go Romo just because the Eagles D, even though they're somehow always ranked high in fantasy, they're soft, man. He should be able to dink and dunk on them all day.
All right. Charlie Parker, Cool Hand CP3 on Twitter. Good friend of mine. He's a Canuck. He's up in Canada. We play in a couple leagues together. He wants to know wide receiver decimation in a few leagues and need a wing and a prayer. Greg Jennings or Robert Woods as a wide receiver. I honestly don't know if I'm playing Charlie this week in either of our leagues. If he's decimated, I hope I am. But Greg Jennings or Robert Woods. Taha, what do you feel towards that? Another leaner right towards your boy Tyrod.
Yeah, man, this is an easy call. Man, Greg Jennings, did he on the field? What is Miami doing? What is Miami signing all these targets, trading and drafting all these dudes? Like, what are they doing out there? Like, I'm confused, man. Their salary cap is looking gross in the next couple of years. If you're a Dolphins fan, beware. What are you going to do? You're paying Sue $20 million a year. Anyway, I'm leaning my boy Robert Woods, man. He might get a TD this week. The guy might break something off and Bill Belichick's booty real soon, and he's got a good chance to score. I like Woods. Easy call. Put him in your lineup. Canada rocks. I'm up there all the time fishing.
The elders.
Whistler. We love Canada.
But to piggyback what you were saying, yeah, I don't know what's happening in Miami. I still, like I said, I like Tannehill. I like Lamar Miller. I like the options they have there. Devontae Parker got one target or one snap or one route in week one. One snap, right. So they want to get him more involved. Kenny Stills, they want to get more involved. Rashard Matthews seems to be taking over that wide receiver 2 role. So I really don't know what's happening. He's still got Jarvis Landry, who's the target hog there. So I think if you had a choice between Greg Jennings and Robert Woods, I like the quarterback situation in Miami better, but I like the opportunity better for Robert Woods in Buffalo. How about you, Doug? You want to take that one real quick? Robert Woods, Greg Jennings, just hit him.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty easy call. I'd have to go with Robert Woods. Not saying I love either option, but the Patriots secondary is didn't do too hot last week, and you always see Robert Woods just randomly score a touchdown and then not even think about it. It's not really get noticed. So I definitely think this could be a week like DeHall said where he scores a touchdown.
All right, cool. Cool. Let me jump into a couple more here. Let's go a little quick fire. And I'm going to ask both of you, but let's go a little quick fire because we're coming down the last 3 or 4 minutes here. David and Booze, Boozer Dog 123 on Twitter. Who should I start this week, Alfred Morris or Chris Ivory? Now, if you were listening a little while ago when we were talking to the fantasy doctor, he said he's not too concerned about the Chris Ivory groin. Between the two, I still think, I don't know, it's hard to to like Alfred Morris against the Seattle defense. So I would feel comfortable with Chris Ivory. Doug, what do you feel?
Chris Ivory all the way. I love his matchup, and I just love what he's doing.
So how about you?
Yeah, I'm a huge Ivory fan. I'm a little concerned with the Jets having to let down and the Colts blowing them out and Ivory becoming non-existent, like because they're down by 21, which is known to happen to him in the past. But you still have to lean Ivory here.
Okay. I got another question we're getting into right now from Mario Morales. That's at Morales32179. Andy Dalton, Mariota, Kaepernick, or Flacco for quarterback. Mario, if you were listening since the beginning of the show, we went over a couple of the guys that Taha absolutely can't stand this week at quarterback, and some he loves, and one that he loves is Colin Kaepernick. So I'm going to let Taha answer this one first, and if you want to answer a little bit more to that.
Yeah, I'm just going to lean Kaepernick because with all those guys, I like his upside the most. Granted, this guy's known to drop 130 yards passing on us with no TDs every once in a while. But I'm predicting it's not that kind of a day. I mean, the upside is limitless. Like I said, horrible defense, good takeoff, run, do whatever he wants to do, find guys downfield. I have to lean Kaepernick over. I heard Mariota and I heard who else?
Andy Dalton.
Yeah, Dalton's going against two really good San Diego Chargers cornerbacks. You know, he's got a lot more weapons though. So I mean, he's a viable play, but I like Kaepernick's upside over Dalton this week.
All right, cool. We'll leave it there, Doug. I'm going to start this one for you. This is from Zen Master Zeke on Twitter. Who should I start this week, Malcolm Floyd or Randall Cobb? I think that's a pretty obvious one. I know people are still a little worried about the Randall Cobb injury, but he's still Randall Cobb, so I don't think there's any reason to bet.
Yeah, Cobb. Yeah,
Okay, so now we'll get into another one from Eddie Winslow, EGIS Beast on Twitter. Who should I start this week, Pierre Garçon or Doug Martin? Doug, how do you feel? Pierre Garçon or Doug Martin?
Doug Martin. I can't trust Kirk Cousins even with Deshaun Jackson out.
All right, Taha, what do you say?
Yeah, Garcon's kind of a sneaky play this week with no Deshaun. He could have a ton of targets, but the question, like Doug just said, like, are they going to have time to throw the ball? Are they going to have time to throw him the ball at all? And who was the other guy? Doug Martin?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to – Doug Martin is the much, much, much safer play. But I'm a little higher on Garcon than most this week, but if it's me, I'm still leaning Martin.
All right, I'm going to ask two more, and then I think we're going to have to wrap it up. Christopher Doyle, Chris Doyle on Twitter, needs Twitter's help urgently, quickly. Who you got today, Cards or Bears defense? Taha. Cards or Bears? Cardinals all day. What do you say,
Cards.
Doug, Cards too? I say Cards as well. There you go. You got 3 votes. And then we'll get this last one in. High noon, 206. And I'm going to go with this last because I think it's a pretty good one. Who should I start this week? Jordan Reed or Ladarius Green? Doug.
Jordan Reed, baby.
Jordan Reed?
I'm going Ladarius. I think he's going to find the seams.
All right. Well, I think they're both good options. I think the upside is with Jordan Reed. I would take that on the matchups. But
it's
you got
10 o'clock anyway. It's too late. You can't make the move.
Well, there you go. And that means it's time for us to wrap up. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. Good luck with your games today. And make sure you subscribe to the channel. Follow us on Twitter. You can find all our Twitter handles in the description of this channel. And good luck to everybody. And don't forget to tune into Doug's Waiver Wire show this Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. And we'll talk to you later. Thank you, everybody.
Have fun, guys.